Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rumors versus Facts, the Georgia Recruiting Show, sponsored by UGAsports.com. That is the site where all of us work at. My name is Rodney Bussey. I'm joined by Jed May and Lance McCurley. They are my two top recruiting guys. Maybe we'll get Trent on here, but we don't consider him a top guy because he's always busy with his kids. So, family duties or some BS like that. But anyway, Trent's a great dad, and I respect all the work that he does with his kids. He loves them a lot, and we like to get him on here when he can. So hopefully he'll join us later, but if not, it's okay. We can manage the show without him. Busy weekend for Georgia recruiting. All the talk was about Caleb Downs, but then, they also had some visitors, and Georgia's out there. Georgia's on the road, constantly seeing guys. So we got a lot to talk about in this week's show, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. Please hit the like button if you would, or if you don't like it, just leave us a comment, and we will get to them. We'll put your comments on the screen. We got Lucky Dog in here right off the bat, and we appreciate him or her being with us. All right, guys, let's jump right into it with Caleb Downs, because that was the biggest recruiting news of the week. Georgia had him in the bag. They had him enrolled, had him in Athens. And then at the last second, huge NIL deal with Ohio State. Ohio State steps in. Ohio State's going balls to the wall. Mm-hmm. And I just want to kind of get your thoughts about it, because not so much Ohio State, but the fact that Georgia almost had two All-Americans at safety. That was going to be nuts. And again, I could tell you it was a done deal, and it was. But apparently deals can be undone in this new NIL age. So, Jed, we'll start with you. Let me get your thoughts.
Yeah, kind of like you said, it was done till it wasn't. Caleb went in the portal, I want to say Tuesday, maybe. And then after that, it was kind of like a when is this thing going to go public? Rada, you went on the board, I think it was Thursday, and basically said it was a done deal, which again it was. And then Friday, we're like, okay, maybe he'll announce around lunch. Maybe he'll announce in the afternoon. I kind of thought that he might pop during Kalen DeBoer's appearance on Feinbaum on Friday, because that would be a very Kirby thing to do. And it just kept going through the day. And then I think it was about 8:15, 8:30, we heard from a source that said, hey, we think he might be going to Ohio State now. And as we tried to chase that down, literally about 5 minutes later, he committed to Ohio State. So, yeah, it was a shock. To me, I think everybody out there kind of thought Georgia was the favorite, continued to be the favorite all through it, and then it obviously turned to Ohio State at the last minute. So it's a big miss, but as I said on the show the other night when we were talking about Keon Keeley and Jaheim Otis, adding an All-American in safety is probably a luxury item when you're talking about this Georgia team. So it's a big miss.
Yeah, it came as a little bit of a shock. Because we had talked about it, a little bit on Thursday's show. And, after he went into the portal last week, it was just like, holy crap, this is happening. And then, we had heard that, it was a done deal, and it was just a waiting game to see, when he was going to announce. Obviously, there were some rumors that he was, getting an apartment in Athens that I don't think that was true. But I was told that, him and Kirby, when the family went to go eat, and the dinner lasted a few hours on Thursday night. And, after I had heard that, he, I was like, okay, then, this, backs up Roddy's point. This is a done deal. And then, Friday, we're waiting all day to see when it's going to drop. And then it drops at like 8:15. I was actually on my way home from a high school basketball game, and I had to pull over, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. The board was pretty fun that night. Yeah. But it was just kind of a shock. And I put out a tweet. I'm like, God damn, Georgia only has one All-American safety right now. And but he was, it was more of this was more of like the icing on the cake, rather than, and the cherry on top, rather than, a huge need. And I just, it just shows you how desperate Ohio State is to pay that much money for a safety, when Georgia's already got, what they need. And, with Bolden and then Aguero as well, and a few others, Jake Pope and Dan Jackson. So the depth is there. It's just, that would have been probably the best.
More than icing. That's a whole nother cake. If you get Caleb Downs, that's a second cake, baby. That's ice cream on your brownie, it's more than that. And I get what you're saying. Georgia's good. Like where the secondary stands, we're going to have Coach Donnan on tomorrow at 6:30, and we're going to ask him about the Georgia secondary because there's a couple of years ago when he said, "Look," he said it off the air, but Georgia was like kicking everybody's butt, and he goes, "I'm worried about this secondary." I'm like, Coach, Georgia hasn't lost a game. Then all of a sudden they get torched, and Ohio State damn near beats them, and he's like, and they were exposed. And he says, "I told you in week 2 I was worried about this secondary, but Georgia had beaten everybody so handily that I didn't think anything of it until it was the second half of that LSU game in the championship, and then the Ohio State game." Yeah. My point is, if anybody can watch a secondary and tell if it's good or bad, Coach Donnan can. And we're going to have him on tomorrow. We're changing the time because he has a meeting. So instead of normally we do it at 12, we're going to do it at 6:30 tomorrow. So tune in. I'm going to get his thoughts. Kind of a early look ahead to the secondary. I want to go over real quick. I know a lot of people are done talking about Caleb Downs, but I do want to explain how some of that went down. When we had the Thursday a week ago reaction show that when we had the reaction show of Nick Saban retiring, we talked about Caleb Downs. We said, no, he won't come here. Then we had the Thursday, the T-Rob response or hiring or reaction. And we're like, I say, hey, is he coming here? No, he's not coming here. Then Friday or Saturday last week, I heard from one of the big donors, like, yeah, we're going after him. We're going after him hard. So I went on the vault at UGAsports.com and said, look, I don't want to get your hopes up, folks. But I said twice, he's not coming to Georgia. I'm changing my mind because Georgia has a possibility. The hiring of T-Rob is a big deal. And part of it was the money that was backing that up too. Anyway, then we found out from the coaching staff, got him. Found out from the NIL cooperative, they got him. Found out from the administration and the enrollment, they got him. You're talking about apartments. I know the guy that was taking him around looking at him. So I'm not saying they signed a lease, but they were looking. So he was done. It was done. People were asking me about Ohio State, and I found out he had told the family or told Ohio State, we're going to Georgia. And then Ohio State came in with a 2.5 to 3 times NIL deal. So it's a good bit of money. And I don't blame the kid. He's going to be a first-round pick wherever he goes, in my opinion. So yeah, people say, well, you need to be developed at Georgia. Yeah, you could be developed at Georgia. Absolutely. And T-Rob could do that. But I don't know that this guy needs a ton of development. He's a freshman All-American, the first guy at Alabama to lead the team in tackles in 50-plus years. So getting him would have been nice, and Georgia had him. I'm just saying there's a new thing, whereas the same sources that nailed Trevor Etienne coming to Georgia, and we reported that he was coming, London Humphreys, Colby Young, Michael Jackson, Xavier McLeod, everybody that we told you, hey, they're coming, they were more sure about Caleb Downs than there were any of them. So it's there is a new way, I don't say of covering this, but a new way of watching recruiting. Because even if you signed, you have escape clauses, unless it's a national letter of intent, or you are not only enrolled, but you got to go to that first day of classes, because you can be enrolled somewhere and still go somewhere else. But once you've attended classes, then you're locked in. So until you attend classes from now on, I think we're not going to write down who's actually at Georgia unless they've either signed a national letter of intent or we've seen them on campus in Accounting 101. So anyway, for the folks that wanted the inside baseball aspect of how the whole Caleb Downs thing went down, that was it. Anyway, I want to move on to another big visitor recently. We talked last week about Juju Lewis classifying from the class of 2026 to 2025. He's the 5-star number 1 quarterback in the nation. He was the number 1 player in the class of 2026. He reclassified, he's out of Carrollton, to the class of 2025. And you would think a guy moving up an entire year, well, if you're number 1, if you're number 1 sophomore, now you got to compete against all these juniors. Where are you going to be in this class? They put him at number 2, saying that he could be number 1. That's how good Juju Lewis is. And again, our sources are like, hey, Georgia's got a great shot here. And Georgia, to me, we've been saying Georgia's been out of it forever. But there's a renewed effort there, if you will. He's not going to spend his senior season out in California. That's a big deal. And so a lot of eyes are on Juju Lewis, but I want to talk about a different quarterback. I want to get your guys' thoughts on Ryan Montgomery, who this guy has been a target for Georgia for 2 years. And he was in town recently. Jed, tell me about Ryan Montgomery. Tell the fans and the viewers about Ryan Montgomery and why it matters that he was in Athens this weekend.
Yeah, Ryan Montgomery has out of Ohio has unofficially visited Georgia probably I want to say 4 or 5 times, which is huge because it's not like Juju Lewis making a 2-hour drive from Carrollton. It's a more of an expense to get down there from Ohio. Came down, actually visited South Carolina like Friday, Saturday, and then came to Georgia yesterday. Ate dinner with Mike Bobo and Montgomery Van Gorder last night. And then was on campus today, had the facility, had meetings with coaches, all that kind of stuff. So as Trent, our renowned Ryan Montgomery expert, is here now. But it's big. And it's so interesting because before the question was, okay, does Georgia bother taking a 2025 guy when you have Lewis and Jared Curtis in 26? Do you go all in with Montgomery? And if you don't get him, it's fine. And now the question is, would you take Montgomery knowing that Lewis could go elsewhere? How does Jared Curtis, the 2026 factor in? So the Lewis reclassification is really, really interesting. Just because, I mean, there's a scenario where Georgia gets 2 of these 3 guys, maybe 3, and there's a scenario where they could end up with none. So there's a lot of.
Don't do that to the viewers, man. Don't do that to them.
Trent, do you have anything to add on the whole, the Ryan Montgomery situation after they left campus today?
Yeah, I swapped a few messages with his dad, and they're actually having some flight issues. So I'm going to talk to him more tomorrow. But he said coming into the visit and leading up the visit, leading up to doing Raiola stuff, it's kind of a mute thing between Georgia and Ryan. The communication continued, but they just couldn't give a definite answer of a priority board if they were going to take a quarterback in 24 or 25. And that's changed since Dylan Raiola, went to Nebraska. And I asked him straight up, I was like, did they get a better idea where things stood? And he said, yes, they did. And he said, right now, we are right there in the mix. He said, and I said, what did Georgia plan to take 2 in the class? And he said they didn't give any inkling to that they were going to take 2. Right now, the plan is to take 1, and they'll go from there. But he said that I think we're in the top tier of guys that they're looking at, because I mentioned to him, I said, well, maybe possibly with Juju, going to the 25 class, reclassifying. I said, it's him and Ryan. Did they mention that? And he said they didn't really mention names, but they mentioned that he's in the top tier. So I'm assuming Ryan's right up there with Juju, and maybe another guy is the top group that they're looking at in the 25 class now.
And that's big because, again, it's not a guarantee that Ryan Montgomery would commit to Georgia, even if he's given the green light. I know he's really close with the staff at South Carolina. He's building a relationship with Florida. He's getting down there, I think, in a couple weeks. So it's not like if Georgia gives him the green light, he's going to commit. But if Georgia tries to, I guess, slow play Ryan Montgomery, for lack of a better word, he will end up at South Carolina, Florida, somewhere else. So then if you go all in on Juju Lewis, if you miss on him, if he sticks with USC or, he's visiting Auburn, he's visiting Colorado, that is probably not an ideal scenario. Like you said, Trent, given Dylan Raiola going to Nebraska, they really want to take a 25 guy now. So it's very interesting. I think the big question is, does Montgomery have, I don't want to say a committable offer, but does he have the green light to commit if he wants? Because he wants to commit within the next month. At least that's the plan that we've heard as of late. So I think it sounds like you said, he might be in that top tier of guys. Georgia might take his commitment if he offered it. Would he pick Georgia? Would they take him? Those are the things that we're going to have to continue trying to dig and find out more in the next couple of weeks.
I remember early from his recruitment, and this was before I started working on it, but just following him, and I know that he visited Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State a lot. So was he even, obviously, he's developing these relationships with these SEC schools, but I mean, are those schools still in play? That's just a question for, Trent, as he's narrowing down this decision.
Yeah, I think Penn State's school is still in the mix. I think Ohio State has kind of he's got a brother on campus there, so everybody kind of penciled him in at Ohio State early in this recruitment. But when Blaine was with us, he always said, it's not a done deal by any means to Ohio State. And then when Ohio State took another quarterback in that class, and now they got two they took in 2024, kind of eliminates Ohio State. And so I would say if he does stay up north, I would say Penn State's the team to watch. But I would definitely watch schools down here such as Florida, Auburn, South Carolina, and definitely Georgia. You're muted.
Mute.
Talk to me real quick about Julian Sayin.
He's a good kid for Ohio State. That was the one where.
Well, no, I just wondered because Georgia was looking at that. It was the UNLV kid.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at quarterbacks, and then all of a sudden, hey, Sayin's back on the market. And this was a kid that wanted to commit to Georgia back in the day, and Georgia's like,
yeah.
You think the coaches reached out to him?
I would say
don't see it, but I'm just curious because
I don't know that it was ever really seriously, that would have happened. I mean, I think going to Ohio State, you look at that and you think he has a pretty decent shot to be starting in 25. Yeah. And at Georgia, you're going to be behind, Gunnar Stockton could have a leg up on you. So I don't know. I mean, I would think there was probably at least a initial, touching base or whatever, but it probably didn't progress much beyond that.
I mean, I would assume there's some sour grapes there too behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because they didn't take his commitment first time around. They went with Ron Bussey. Most of the time when that happens, it's not necessarily burning a relationship, but it's mostly he was a second choice for Georgia back then, and he don't want to be somebody's second choice. So he probably got $1 million. So.
Yeah. Again, I didn't think Georgia would, but I was just curious because I know that they had recruited him, and then we had a story ready about his commitment, and then we found out no, hang on. So we deleted that one out of the admin because it wasn't going to happen. So I just wondered if, to me, it was kind of shocking that he jumped into the portal, but Alabama's lost quite a lot. There were a couple of guys that we thought might go into the portal, and we like Georgia's chances if they did. But so far, they did not do so. What's the latest on Oates and the other gentleman?
Yes.
Just like you said, they haven't gone in the portal yet. So,
yeah. I mean that I don't know what
window. How long do they have?
They got 30 days.
I know they can't get in class now.
It's been about 2 weeks since Saban retired, so probably about 15, 16 days. But my thing is those, without even though Downs was, I wouldn't say a miss, but it sucks he's not coming, for Georgia fans. But these two guys are like at positions of need for Georgia, and Downs, like we said, was kind of like the cherry on top or icing on the cake.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of, that Downs was a part of those conversations behind the scenes with those two guys. So, when he elects to go elsewhere after he's recruiting two kids with him to come there, it kind of, I don't know what those two guys think, because that's, I was kind of getting my information through what was being said from those three. So we'll see if those two even go in the portal. Like you said, it's too late to join. It's too late to even enroll right now, but they still could do it and join after spring. But announce their intentions, or
well, they could announce now and then come after spring, and they would still be able to play next year. It's the kids that go into the portal in the spring session of the transfer portal who cannot play at an SE school this upcoming year.
Yeah, so as long as they announce their intentions before that 30 days up, they can transfer.
So they could come the summer and still play. So there's not the door isn't closed there, and I can tell you there's about anywhere from $360,000 to $500,000 in promised NIL money is now currently available. So come one, come all, and it'll be interesting to watch Alabama have to put together some of their losses out of that. In that second window in the spring. And there'll be a lot of kids that want to go play at the University of Alabama. But until the SEC either loses in court or they vacate the rule, you are not allowed to play in the SEC if you transfer in that second window after spring practice. So Alabama will be looking far and wide for guys from outside the SEC who can transfer in and play next year. So it'll be very, very interesting there.
It's going to be a glorified Washington team, the way it looks.
Yeah.
Very much. Real quick, Andy Stowe, a great supporter of us, and he has a very good show that a lot of people watched last night on the Sunday night show. Says, can y'all elaborate on that little? They took Ryan Puglisi and said no to Julian Sayin. Then they wanted Raiola too. Why not take Pug and Sayin originally? It's a good question.
I'll be honest. I don't remember, Trent, you might remember. I don't remember the timeline of Puglisi and Sayin's decisions in relation to each other, but I do remember that Raiola was like a tier above what like they would have added him, because even during the Arch Manning recruitment, Georgia was like they might like Raiola as much, if not more, than Manning. So it was we're set just taking Puglisi. We're not in love with these other guys, but once Raiola came back on the market, it's like we're going to do whatever we can to add this guy and let everything sort itself out after that. So I don't remember if they had Puglisi in the fold when they said no to Sayin. I honestly don't remember how those stacked up. But again, Raiola was a prospect who they really wanted to get to Athens. They liked him so much as a prospect compared to all the other guys in that class that they wanted to bring him in with Puglisi, who again, Roddy, as we've said, he even when Raiola was committed, he was far from the the quote unquote other quarterback in that class. Georgia coaches are very, very, very high on him.
The players are high on him.
Tangibles, is obviously physical traits. So
Puglisi worked out in front of the summer of 2022. Worked out in front of Todd Monken and Mike Bobo, and they loved him. And it was he came on campus and worked out in front of them, and it went into September. I think late September of 22 is when we had Julian Sayin his commitment story ready. He said he was committing, and it kind of caught us off guard when they said when he called to commit, Georgia said no. Then all of a sudden you see Ryan Puglisi commit in October. I think you had a situation where Dylan Raiola was a take no matter what. Then they had Puglisi higher than Sayin on the board. And that was their thing. If Dylan Raiola commits, it's a luxury. If he doesn't, Puglisi's
got our quarterback.
So I think it was more so, and where they stood and where it ended up is where they were at, in the fall of 2022, is they had Puglisi higher than Sayin on the board after his workout in that summer, and then Dylan Raiola came available. He committed. That was just a luxury of having both of them, and then he ended up going elsewhere. So then you're back where they started, where they had they had him over Sayin then. So I think that was where it went.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Not taking a quarterback the year before, taking two this past. Ideally, they wanted two this past year, which is kind of why I asked about the whole Julian Sayin being back on the market. They had two, they lost one. Then they were looking to add the UNLV guy, then they didn't. So I'm like, maybe Sayin. So I know we're getting off on a tangent there, and I appreciate you guys indulging me with it. But so other people had asked, so I'm not the only one.
And if you add a guy like Julian Sayin, you take, and it's going to take a chunk of NIL change out of it to do it. Does that lessen your chances for a guy like Juju or even the NIL? I think they're kind of looking, down the lines, and I know that's a ways down the lines, but Juju ain't going to come cheap NIL wise. So,
real quick on Juju Lewis, people like, oh, Georgia doesn't stand a chance. In the normal Georgia system of the way the NIL is currently set up, and folks, James Caraway has a good comment here. He's had a bunch of good comments. I should be putting them all on the screen. He says, can you break down the letter from the donor on the forum? We had a multi-million-dollar donor go on to he basically sent me a letter. I know him, one of the greatest men I've ever met. Fantastic person. Guy gives a lot of money to UGA. Biggest UGA fan you'll ever find. Puts his money where his mouth is. He was reading the board. He saw the consternation when everybody was in the transfer portal. He's seen Georgia lose Dylan Raiola at the last second and Caleb Downs at beyond the last second after it was completely done. And he knows there have been other players that Georgia's wanted, and especially with guys transferring. A lot of the transfers were about NIL, and Georgia has won some of those battles. Trevor Etienne, for one, Georgia put up really good money for him. They put up decent money for KJ Bolden, but Bolden himself will tell you he took less to come to Georgia. This multi-million-dollar donor went on UGA Sports, sent me the letter. I posted it for him so that they wouldn't know who it was. And he wrote a huge piece about what's going on at Georgia with NIL. And remember, a lot of people, when you give NIL money, you don't get all those extra. If you give to the McGill Society or you give to the UGA Athletic Association, they can use that money to enhance the facilities. They can use that money to pay coaches, pay for the scholarships. You have kids going to classes. The University of Georgia Athletic Association has to pay the university for those classes. So they're paying the scholarship, the tuition and all that. The university doesn't just say, hey, yeah, you're on scholarship. You can go to classes for free. The university gets their money from the athletic association. So the University Athletic Association needs money to pay its coaches, to pay its staff. And then, of course, the coaches need money for NIL. And the two are almost incompatible because people who give money to NIL don't get all those cool points towards their seats and their priorities. They don't get a tax break on it. It's not tax deductible. Like if you give to the Athletic Association, there's a tax deduction. Or if you give to UGA, it's not when you do NIL. Now, if you have a business, it can be listed as a business expense. But the point being, Georgia is good in NIL, but compared to Texas and Texas A&M and Ohio State, you're millions behind. You're not close. You're better than most, far better than most, and getting better every day, but you're behind. So he wrote a great letter explaining all that stuff. I recommend everybody go check it out at ujsports.com. It explains a lot. And I'll say this, the reason I bring that up is because when it comes to Juju Lewis, this is a guy who will probably wind up not going through the normal NIL channels, kind of like Brock Bowers. I could definitely see corporate money here. And again, a lot of the NIL deals are corporate, companies pay for stuff, but I'm talking, this would be like Delta corporate. This would be Coca-Cola, Home Depot. It's not going to be some of the smaller mom and pop shops. Okay. This is going to be, he's going to command major dollars. And if Georgia can line that up, Georgia's got a chance. If they can't, forget it. We'll stop talking about Juju and we'll talk a lot more Ryan Montgomery stuff. Real quick, I want to ask you guys about something else I don't know, which is pretty common. Who's this?
Yeah, well, he's from Stanford, so he must be pretty smart. He's been here as like a tight end. He visited, I want to say it was that first visitor weekend in January, which is 10 days ago or so now. He had a visit lined up to Texas. Texas has taken a transfer tight end, I believe, from Alabama. So Georgia appears to be in good shape here. And people say, oh, why would you take a tight end? Why does Georgia need a tight end? Well, you've got Oscar Delp, who is, he's proven to be a solid piece in that tight end room. And then behind him, you've got Lawson Lucky and Pierce Spurlin, which Pierce Spurlin has been dinged up a lot of last year. Lawson Lucky had injuries to deal with. And then you've got two freshmen behind them. So you don't have a ton of experienced depth, I guess, behind Oscar Delp. And, if something happens to him, then you really get then. So adding a guy like Urasek, he's played, I think, 4 years in Stanford, Roddy, or has been at Stanford 4 years anyways. He's put up solid stats over the past 3 years. So a guy who he got good size. He's 6'4", 240. He again, smart guy. So it'd be a depth piece, a contributing depth piece, a guy who would play a lot, who would catch some passes, but a guy who also keeps you from maybe depending on freshmen more than you'd like to. So Georgia looks to be in good shape if you connect the dots. But now we're just kind of in wait and see mode. Does he take any more visits? Does he pop soon? I don't know how all the transfer stuff works as far as can he get in for classes now, or does he have to wait till the summer? So that's another kind of wrinkle to it. But bottom line, Georgia appears to be in good shape to add a talented guy from Stanford.
Yeah, I think he's a very good blocker as well. So if you're talking about, you're going down the list of Georgia tight ends just a minute ago, and you're looking at a guy that can split out Spurlin. You talk about the 2 freshmen that'll be coming in, but then Oscar Delp's more of a split out guy, and this guy can catch passes, no doubt about it. But he is a very good blocker, and I think that brings if you want to get in that 12 personnel and you want to use Oscar Delp like you use Brock Bowers. And that just gives another dimension to that offense, and that allows that to happen by bringing a tight end in that is willing to block, has played inline tight end at Stanford a good bit. They haven't been quite up to the standards they were, but they've played hard-nosed football, and he's experienced playing that inline tight end. So it just brings another guy in. They can do that, and more importantly, and being able to get in that 12 personnel and block.
Yeah, like Trent said, depth is always great to have, and he's smart too. He can bring up the team GPA.
Exactly. Georgia's got a graduation issue that people are banging him over. So
if he could wear goggles with a helmet on, that would be.
I was looking. Hey, damn you! That's why I was scrolling through the photos to see if he actually wore those glasses underneath there. Because these are some birth control glasses he's got on here in this picture, man. That is just unfortunate. And I know it's just a reflection on the thing. That's not tape in the middle. It's just a reflection of the glasses. He's got those kind of Wayfarer styles on. But, man, that is just an unfortunate photo. Stanford's doing him dirty there. And you got him with the skinhead look there, with all the shorn. But he actually has hair, man. That Stanford. That's why he's transferring. Get away from those.
It kind of looks like Dan McDonald with goggles.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. That's a handsome dude there in that picture.
Yeah.
But there, Jesus, that's cold-blooded Stanford. Y'all are wrong for that.
I hope Dan ain't watching this.
Yeah, he's gonna get out of there. All right, real quick today, a bunch of there's a shakeup in the 5 stars. Georgia added a 5-star today, not commit-wise, but rankings-wise, and we all know that the rankings are solely done by our own Jed May. Right. So we got to ask Jed May about why he finally changed the rankings for Georgia.
Yeah, well, I told y'all the last time the rankings were updated that Joseph Jonah Ajonye, which I think he was like 60-ish in the last rankings update. And I said, hey, Jordan Hall was in this same ballpark last year, and he had a great time at the All-American Bowl or game or whatever and shot up to a 5-star. Joseph Jonah Ajonye has done the same thing. He had a great week at the Under Armour game down in Orlando, and he's shot up. Player cards aren't updated, but I believe he is 16th in the country now is where I have him. So, he's a great – I mean, he's listed at 6'5", 260. He honestly looks a little bigger than that at the Under Armour game. So you can put him on the end. You could honestly kind of use him as maybe how Michael Williams has been used. You could – depending on what weight they want him at, you could maybe slide him in as a 3-tech in certain situations. And he's just an explosive athlete on the edge. And I mentioned this in the story I wrote today. Georgia is trying to figure out ways to generate more havoc, to get after the quarterback, to create pressure. That hasn't necessarily been a super strength the past year or two. And when you're looking for guys to get after the quarterback, I could see Jonah Ajonye, carving, because he's early enrolling, as are all 4 or 5 stars there, carving out a role for himself as the season goes on. Maybe at first in situational pass rushing roles, that third down package, and then maybe getting even more, standard down playing time as the year goes on.
I'd love to see him lining up as a 5-tech, Michael lining up more in a jack position, having those 2 guys rush the passer, because Georgia plays a lot of that 4-2-5 with 3 safety look, or the stars, but this is really a safety. But you got your 1-3-5 most of the time, sometimes a 4-eye, but I'd love to see those 2 guys rushing the passer, and they could cause some havoc. Have your interior guys, either Jordan Hall or something, but I think you would create more pressure doing that. And it's no offense to the current Georgia Chaz Chambliss and those guys, but they can't create the pressure like Michael can on the edge, and Michael doesn't do it as good and playing on the interior, especially in that nickel situation. He doesn't do it as good. So I think having two guys that can rush the passer on the end, like a Jonia and Michael, would just make that pass rush a lot more dynamic.
Well, and you start thinking about the guys who have flashed, some like Jalen Walker has flashed in a pass rushing role. Damon Wilson flashed at points last year. Like, you start thinking about all the mixing and matching you can do, getting those guys on the field, especially, like I said, in those third down packages. And all of a sudden that pass rush, looks a lot more different. So again, a guy who can get after the passer, and you can talk about the other guys. Ellis Robinson is third overall. He is the top ranked defensive player in the country. Justin Williams, Joe and Johnny's teammate, is 11th overall, and then KJ Bolden is 14th. So Georgia right there has got the number one corner, number one inside linebacker, number one safety, and Jonah Johnny, I believe, is second among strong side defensive ends.
We don't want him then.
Yeah,
well,
you're not number one. Hey,
you know who number one is. It's a certain strong side defensive end out in Missouri that Georgia won.
Yeah,
can't get number one. You have to settle for number two. So,
but you know what? It's kind of a shot in Georgia's face, but for Jed putting Dylan Raoul in number 2 and Ellis Robinson number 3, because we all know who the better player is. So.
Yeah.
Listen, you got to think about positional value with these things. There's a lot of think how happy I could have made the Nebraska fan base by having that. So they haven't been a great program the past few years. You got to throw them a bone once in a while. So. Obviously Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State is number 1. That kid is a freak show at receiver. So,
and the only person that's been able to shut him down or contain him is at number 3.
Yeah, which Ellis Robinson. I mean, he's at IMG Academy, so he's going against great players in practice every day. They play a national schedule, so he's playing some of the best receivers in the country on Friday nights every week, and I put this in the story that he wins those matchups more often than not. So he is an absolute just freak show.
John Garcia talking about Ellis Robinson will make your mouth water.
Yeah.
John's been covering recruiting longer than I've been alive, it feels like. I mean, the guy's been around a long time. When he says this is maybe the best one he's seen since Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, that's it. You take
okay, damn.
That's good company.
Yeah, that's high praise indeed. And Coach Hayes says he would definitely fit that weak side tech edge guy. So if Coach Hayes says it, then I believe it. He's a good dude. Speaking of, Georgia right now is still number 1 in the rankings. The rankings will be updated tomorrow. Check around noon. There'll be the release of the Rivals 250, and we will see how the class rankings shake out. Right now, Georgia is number 1 rankings with 4 5-star prospects, but they might. I'm about to say, could they get another one?
It's possible. Terry Bussey there is taking an official visit to Athens this weekend. Committed to A&M. I believe A&M is getting an official visit again, or an official visit. He's going to LSU as well. Dante Williams has gotten Georgia right in the thick of this. He said it. Trent, you talked to him at the All-American Game Bowl, the Orlando one, and my connection with Dante Williams has really gotten Georgia into this. So, but it was interesting because he played receiver at the All-American Bowl, but Georgia wants him as a DB, which should surprise absolutely no one. So I don't know. I mean, I think the relationship with Dante Williams has gotten Georgia in it before. Leading up to this, it has seemed like, and I'll be honest, it's not a recruitment I followed super closely because Georgia hadn't been in it. It seemed like a Texas A&M LSU battle. It very well still kind of looks like that could be that. I would predict he ends up at one of those two, but getting him on campus for an official, especially this close to signing day, is definitely noteworthy. And listen, I wouldn't say Georgia is desperate for a defensive back, but they very clearly tried very hard to add Caleb Downs. So now, okay, well, we missed on Caleb. Do we ramp up the pressure that much more to get Terry Bussey in here? So,
yeah,
I think
a long shot, I would say, but Georgia's definitely going to take their biggest swing at it this weekend and see where they stand after that.
I think it ups the chances a lot by not landing Caleb Downs. I think if you do land Caleb Downs, you have 0 to no chance to land this kid because that fills that safety room up. But not landing Caleb. I think and we talk about the relationship with Dante Williams. There's a relationship there with Travaris Robinson too, and I think that's another big one. That brings two familiar faces that's recruited him, and now you have two guys that he's had prior relationships with. He's very close with Dante Williams. I mean, very close. And he talked about that being his best relationship. Now he's got another coach who's actually coaching the safeties in Travaris Robinson. So having two familiar faces there, and along with Kirby Smart, you got to like where Georgia, kind of stands going into the official visit. Whether or not they can knock A&M off, I think that's going to be the key. Because A&M's fighting to keep him, with his situation and stuff, trying to keep him close to home. But I do think, Georgia does have a chance here because you bringing him on campus, never been on campus, and having two familiar faces in there, and having those relationships will help out, moving this visit. And like Roddy said, there's some NIL money open.
Yeah. And isn't signing day on the 7th? It's the 7th of February. I think the first Wednesday, right?
And I think his visit schedule, I believe, is – I'm trying to think. It might be LSU this coming weekend, and then Georgia next weekend, and then A&M's right after it.
I think Georgia is coming weekend, I think.
But maybe Georgia, then LSU, then A&M.
I think Georgia's first. So
Georgia's February 3rd.
Georgia's gone with this whole – I mean, it's different because it's right at the end, but Georgia has gone with this whole getting the first visit strategy before. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But
it's a complete 180 from where they used to be. They used to fight to be last.
Exactly. So they got a chance to set the bar this weekend. And, again, after Georgia, he will be visiting the two schools that have seemed to be battling for him for a while. But, again, you get him on campus, you got a shot. And they've certainly they got a shot by getting him on getting him in town this weekend.
I think that strategy's changed also with the fact that you bring them in early. You give your, you kind of, they build up an NIL package with them. Then they show them to them. Then that somebody else is, of course, somebody else is going to come higher in other visits. You kind of see where you stand moving forward to see what kind of pitch you can make towards the end of that, and not have to have that last pitch throw in, and then everybody else is fighting to beat you.
I also like this aspect of it too. So, like you say, you get your pitch in there, you get their undivided attention. They're not worn out from visits, but also a visit in the hand is worth two in the bush, because sometimes guys just. How many times have we seen a guy cancel his second, third, fourth visit? Not to the same school, but it's like, hey, I've got 3 visits lined up. I got 4 visits lined up. I got 5 visits lined up. And all of a sudden, 4th and 5th, even though they're going to be like the last ones, like, no, I'm good. And all of a sudden, they commit somewhere else. So, to me, I think it's I always thought if whoever had the last say counts the most, but I see why they've changed their philosophy. It makes a lot of sense, and I think you nailed it there with the whole, get everything out in front of them. Like Jed said, set the bar and set the narrative early on, what you can do and what they're going to see. All right, that's it for those guys. Let's look at some of the questions that we had, and I think we've answered most of them, but I want to touch on them just in case. Let's go over here to PA Dog 610. He says, what do y'all think about getting Alabama players in the spring portal window? We kind of touched on that there are a couple players at Alabama who could transfer now, arrive in the summer, and play this fall. But if you take Alabama players, if they never go into the portal in the fall, in the spring period, they can't play for you next year. Now, here's the thing. That is an SEC rule, and a lot of the rules are just being absolutely obliterated every time they go to court. So who knows? But as it stands now, don't know that you're going to take anybody from Alabama because they can't play right away. And I don't think Kirby's going to take anybody who he doesn't think can play. Am I wrong? Thoughts?
I don't think so.
No, I think you could see like the guys that we mentioned. I think Kirby would jump all over the fact that if they entered the portal, and he would take them in the summer, and that if they enter the portal in the next 16 days or whatever, he can still take them. They can enroll in the summer, and then he would still take those guys because those are two positions of need. I think it all depend on what players enter, if it was a need or not, because they wouldn't get that spring practice with your team. But defensive tackle and outside linebacker are definitely two positions where you need depth and just needs there on the defense side.
And Georgia's going to need to Georgia's going to have some players hit the portal after spring.
Yeah,
I think you need it. Need to clear up some room there, if I'm not mistaken.
just to get down to that 85.
Yeah. Last Warrior says, how long will it take the Vault to recover from the Downs debacle? It says, for me, a commitment from Terry Bussey would help. Excuse me, Bussey. What is the vibe? Is he really that much of a threat to decommit from Texas A&M? Just seems like a long shot with him coming in for the visit. I think we kind of touched on that real quick. But last thoughts, do you think he sticks with A&M or do you think he decommits?
And what he told me in Orlando, and I asked him straight up, I said, are you still committed? How committed are you? He said, well, I'm still committed, but my recruitment is open.
That's not committed.
Exactly. But he's open to other people's pitches. He's open. Hasn't closed the door on anything is the way I took it. So with the coaching change at A&M and all the changes that are taking place, he didn't decommit, but he's opened the door to other schools to give their pitch and, see if Texas A&M is still the right place for him. That's the way I took it. So I think if somebody comes in and just blows his, turns his head and, I think it can change quickly. I don't think he's very committed in that way. I think he loves Texas A&M. I think he loves being close to home, but at the same time, it's a different coaching staff, and he's going to evaluate his options and go from there.
Gotcha.
He's a very smart kid when it comes to, talking and, discussing his recruitment. And I know he's had a hard life, but you can tell he's very mature.
Nice. A question from R Hall 55 that says, how big will the 2025 class be and what percentage will be in-state players? So
I think a good portion. Now I'm looking at the list. Now you've got Juju at the top, but like the next 3-4 behind him, Elijah Griffin, which Trent has a forecast, a future cast for him to come to Georgia. Justice Terry, who's already committed. Zayden Walker, who out of Schley County, who is one of the top linebackers in the country, outside linebacker. He's been to Georgia a bunch. Jed's talked to him. And then Elias Williams, who is already committed and Georgia's trying to hang on to. So I think a good percentage, and I think that Georgia has a chance to land 4 out of 5 guys, if not 5, all 5 out of the top 10 in the state. And then, from there you've got Jonte Gilbert, Usman Chroma, Mason Short, and Josh Petty, and then another kid who I've never really heard of, but I mean, that's like 6, 7 out of 10 that they could possibly land. So
this is a class where, because everyone talked about Georgia until they got KJ Bolden, they missed on so many of the top guys that played at Georgia the past couple of years. But this year, again, like you said, Lance, Ethan Barber's on this list. There's a lot of guys that the talent is kind of spread out through the state, I guess. Georgia is in great shape with Elijah Griffin, great shape with Zayden Walker. They're coming on in Jonte Gilbert's recruitment all of a sudden. Kevin Wynn, as a Lance, who is a defensive tackle, a 3-star that has gotten in and is in hot pursuit of, that could fill that kind of zero tech role. So, Josh Petty, Juan Gaston down there. Yeah, there's a ton of guys that Georgia's in good shape with early. Tavion Wallace is a guy who's coming on the radar now, visited that, I believe, first visitor weekend in January. So right there, number 19 in the state. So there's a ton of guys at multiple positions that Georgia is in on. And let's say you get 20, let's just say 28 kids. You could easily get probably 10 from the state of Georgia. Here's
the thing, the percentage. If you look back at the last class they signed, let's use the class of 2024. You signed 28. 9 of them were from within the state of Georgia. So that's roughly 33%. I say
I
you
would
sign
go over
28
that.
again,
Yeah.
and you're probably looking at about 33 to 40%. I think you're in a much better position for the like as you say, the top 10 in the
Mhm.
state of Georgia than you have been in the last 3 years. Last 2 years has been abysmal when it comes to landing the top 10 players in the state of Georgia. This year, you look dead set. Now, granted, it's a long time before this coming December when these kids can sign. But I think it's trending right now. Damn.
If Georgia lands a 26 commits in this class, I see no less than 12 to 13 in-state guys.
And there's always the chance, knowing Kirby Smart, there's some under the radar defensive back like a Javon Buller type, even a DeMello Jones type that isn't really on the radar yet, and then he comes and camps in the spring or summer, and Georgia offers and he ends up committing. There's a lot of time for that kind of stuff to happen too. So yeah, I would bet 35, 40, pushing up to 50% of the class could be from the state this year.
Yeah.
All right, that's good answer.
This is the most stacked class as a whole. A lot of times you'll see certain positions, but this class has it all. I mean, it has the quarterback, it has several dynamic running backs, it's got a couple wide receivers, it's got the 2 tight ends, or 2 committed to Georgia, it's got offensive linemen, Short and Cortez Smith and those guys. Defense linemen stacked, and really, if there's one position that is lacking, it might be like interior linebacker, where that Georgia's not really a need for in this class. So other than that, this class is really really good in the state of Georgia.
I think you have to get to Tavion Wallace before you get to a linebacker that's in the top 20.
I mean, Georgia wants Zayden Walker as an inside linebacker. I think we probably have him listed as outside.
I thought he was outside. 6'3", 220.
Georgia wants him as inside, is what he's told me.
Okay, no, I get it.
But yeah, like you said, Trent, if there's one position where it didn't necessarily hurt Georgia to not be strong in the state of this class, it's inside linebacker with what Georgia's brought in over the past couple classes. And Jaden Perlotti, Georgia is talking to him about inside linebacker too. I don't know where he is on this list, but those are 2 of the top.
Yeah, but he goes to Buford, so you're not going to land him.
This defensive class in the state of Georgia has a chance to build Georgia's defense line for the next 4 years. I mean, these are a bunch of studs. Like Elijah Griffin and Justice Terry alone are just freaking natures.
They're number 2 and number 3 in the state rankings. They're both 5-star guys. There's only 3 5-stars in the class so far. There are 2 of them, as you say. And I'm about 20 minutes from Manchester, so I'm going to be going to see a lot of Justice Terry right now.
God, he's so fun to watch. If Manchester would use him correctly,
I hope they let him practice. And hit people. I'll just go watch practice every day because he's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Last question. We'll finish with this one. Whiskey and Weed, one of our diehard UGA Sports commenters, says, "Who's the most underrated 5-star, Georgia or otherwise?" Let me call him up real quick.
Who's the one?
Who's the most underrated 5-star?
Who's the most underrated 5-star? So the 5-stars in right above Sammy Brown. We only have 27 5-stars this year. And
we have 31. Those player cards aren't updated yet, but that's pretty close to the whole list. Like Jonah Janye is not on there yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know why it's not updated yet, but
come on, slackers, get around.
Yeah, I got to get on that. Underrated 5-stars. I mean, Ellis Robinson has an argument to be the number 1 player in the country. Like, it's hard to say he's underrated at 3 overall, but he's so good at corner.
I think both of those Florida inside linebacker.
Really Miles Graham is really good.
I would probably say he's underrated. I don't know where he's at as far as.
I think in the new ones he's at like 28.
I would say he's underrated at 28. Yeah. I think he's really, really good. I think him and let's say.
I'm looking at Mike Matthews and Ryan Wingo, 23 and 24. At least how they stand now. I know Ryan Wingo dropped a lot, but everybody in the country was trying to get Ryan Wingo for some reason. I'm saying the coaches like him. I don't know though, and we still have him as a 5-star, but I don't know. Anyway, we will. That is we'll have more on that at noon tomorrow when the full 250 comes out. All the player pages will be updated. We'll be able to go through the position things, and we can talk about that next Monday on the show. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this week. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you would, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. I'm trying to get to 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's just a crazy goal, and it'll take a while to get there, but that's the next one. And if you're watching us on Facebook, hit the like button. That really helps us out on Facebook, and we'd appreciate it. All right, for Trent, Lance, Jed, and myself, we will see you next week.